Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namassami. So the topic this evening, I was told half an hour ago, that is confidence in the path. Which has several different aspects in Buddhism. And a lot of us start sort of developing confidence, have to develop confidence, and some already have confidence. A lot of friends who are born Buddhist normally have so much faith in the Buddhist teachings that there is no sort of effort needed to kind of even develop confidence. It's rather an innate confidence, innate sort of really strength of really knowing that we're on the right path. And with that strength propels us to follow the path and practice. But for some others, myself included, that I was not born Buddhist, but actually encountered the Buddhist teachings pretty much later in life than other friends. So most of my life, I was remembering today, actually I spent it without even encountering the Dhamma, let alone having the opportunity to practice the Dhamma. Actually, we were kind of reflecting on it today, saying, how did we even live without the Dhamma? It's incredible to even think after you've practiced for a while, how it was even possible to be vaguely sane or even know sort of what to do, how to go about life. Also reflecting on our actions of the past, of how misguided perhaps we have been, or sometimes actually we did wholesome actions, but it was all like a little bit erratic. And then when we encounter these teachings for the first time, or at least this was my experience when I first had a bit of a taste of the Dhamma, it's like, oh, there's something really of substance to it. This really makes sense. But at the same time, there was not either faith in these teachings, in the preciousness, so perhaps a little bit of diffidence rather than faith, and no confidence because I hadn't practiced them yet. But yet we have like a sort of, kind of like if we step into a restaurant and that we don't know, we're not familiar with, and we smell the food and we're like, this tastes really good, huh? Let me try and let's see if actually the sort of smell matches the taste. Sometimes it doesn't. It's really disappointing. It smelled much better than it tasted, but sometimes actually it tastes much better than it smells. And this has been my experience with the Buddhist teachings. At the very beginning, it was very bizarre for me to think I'm going to believe in these teachings, or believe in anything for that matter. But once I started practicing them, then I was like, there is something quite powerful here. There are some sort of shifts and changes in my perspective of the world and overall my well-being. And we see this, obviously, like it's remarkable through meditation practice. Just when we even do 1 minute of meditation practice, the effect that it has on the mind, it's remarkable. So we can see it for ourselves. Even when we have the worst sort of meditation session, where our mind is jumping all over the place, like super monkey mind, a million branches, ooh, delicious this, delicious that. Like, oh, I've wasted all this time. Actually, I haven't wasted any time. So even after the worst meditation practice, because we only have paid attention for 2 seconds, like in breath, out breath, oh, like that thought, it's 2 seconds more than what we normally pay attention to. And that brings peace and happiness. So even such a little kind of grain of sand has really like a big weight in our experience, which then kind of propels us and goes like, oh, well, what else is there in this path? What else is there in these teachings? And the more we practice, the more we're like, well, the Buddha said to do this, and if I do this, I get this result. And if I do this other thing, I get this other result. And this result is wholesome, and this result is unwholesome. Sometimes we kind of intellectually go, yeah, that makes sense. And then we do it, and we're like, oh, yeah, actually, he's right. Sometimes we're like, oh, that totally does not make sense. But then we actually try it. And we're like, oh, actually, the Buddha was right. Okay, so let me take this other thing as a working hypothesis. What, for example, if actually karma was a real thing? What would the implications be if every action I made through body, speech, and mind had a consequence? Every intentional action I made had a consequence. What would the implications be? So it's not a matter of like saying, yes, I believe in this or I don't believe in this, but rather investigating the Dhamma and saying, what are the implications? And living, for example, for a period of time, for a year, with actually taking this as a working hypothesis, going, So if now I think that if I have an unwholesome thought and I dwell in it, then there will be sort of consequences. If I really, really think this is true, will I keep indulging in this unwholesome thought or will I not? What about actions? Will I actually do that if I really think there will be a consequence? A lot of times, for example, we're very holy. When people are around, we get together, like very nice and good. Now nobody's around and we're like, oh, yeah. Not really cleaning, not really doing much, getting a little bit all disheveled. But what if our actions actually have an impact, whether or not there's someone looking? Whether or not anyone knows about our actions or about our thoughts. So once we start taking this as a working hypothesis, for example, for a year, then we'll see that naturally our actions will shift. And it all starts kind of getting into place. And we start realizing that the path, once you start walking the path, it's not a matter of faith in terms of I believe in this or I don't believe in this. I believe that karma is true. I don't believe that karma is true. Or I believe that the world is flat, or I believe that the world is round, or I believe that this is this or this is that. But rather, we have an experiential understanding of it. So right now I'm sitting on a cushion. I don't believe that I'm sitting on a cushion. I have an experiential feeling of sitting in a cushion. It's something that I have done. I have acted. I have created. I've really put effort into it. I took the cushion before. I want to take the cushion that I liked and put it underneath. I don't believe that there's a cushion, rather knowing that there's a cushion. So it's the same with the path. The more we practice the Buddhist teachings, the more it becomes part of who we are. And then it's not a matter of like, should I be doing this or should I be doing something else? But rather it becomes second nature. And also, whenever we make mistakes, we have a different understanding of them, a different relationship with it, because we start seeing causes and conditions. We start seeing how if we change the causes and conditions, then we can have different results. That we're not bound to repeat the same mistakes. We're not bound to have the same personality. We're not bound to, just be this bundle of defilements forever and ever and ever. But rather, we are empowered by the Dhamma to really put all the pieces of the puzzle sort of together and make change, make actions, and become a fully perfected being, which is an enlightened being. But in the middle of the path, we have confidence that we are on the right track. And we have confidence that it's the right track because we are perfecting the mind in the process. We don't have to wait to go from bundle of extreme defilements to perfect enlightened being. But we can see how the mind is going towards the perfect mind, and it's shedding all the rubbish as we go. And of course, this doesn't just come just by believing in something, but by really putting effort into practicing the Buddhist teachings. So we talk a lot about right effort a lot in meditation practice. But once again, that is only one part of our job where we do, we decide. Actually, it's possibly the easiest part of the day, of our lives, where we can actually apply right effort. It's the easiest time to actually go, okay, now I'm going to sit for 5 minutes. Now I'm going to sit for 30 minutes. Now I'm going to sit for 3 hours. Or now I'm going to go on a 10-day retreat or a month-long retreat or whatever long retreat. We think that is like so difficult to do, but actually that's the easiest thing to do. Most difficult thing to do is to apply the rest of the Buddhist teachings, to put the right effort and to do it in every single moment of the day. So to put right effort when we're talking, when we want to make a snarky comment, or make a harsh sort of statement, or snappy statement. Some real effort to zip it. Or to really put effort in shaping what we do with our free time or our relationships, instead of having a passive sort of kind of attitude towards what we do with our time outside of our Buddhist meditation practice or outside of the temple. Who are we hanging out? What are the activities that we do? And putting right effort to shift them towards, gradually, but better fast than slow, more and more towards the Dhamma. So finding an appropriate livelihood, surrounding ourselves with spiritual friends as much as possible, people who are in line with the Dhamma. Restraining from intoxicants. That's a lot of right effort. Restraining from killing. Restraining from stealing. Right effort. And at the very beginning, we're like, oh God, really? Oh, now it's summer, the mosquitoes are coming out, really? And I can't kill? Sounds so painful. Really, this Buddhism, I don't know about it. Sounds, what a terrible life to live without being able to kill all the mosquitoes and all the insects that are torturing me during the summer. I used to think that way, actually, by the way. Unfortunately, back in the day, I had this really wrong view of thinking that all the insects were here in the world to torture me. So I thought that they all had to be exterminated in order for me to have a sort of peaceful existence. And that was one of the hardest things for me doing when I took the precepts to do. And I really thought at some point, these people are driving me insane because we can't exterminate the ants that are ruining my day. Because we had an ant infestation at the former monastery. And then the more you let go, the more you practice in accordance to Dhamma, the more actually you realize that you're not letting go of anything except for dukkha. And you're acquiring actually a lot of happiness and contentment and compassion. Now I love ants. Saw them the other day, and they found something on the floor and they came from outside, and then I saw them. I was like, oh, I miss you, friends. Oh, I remember the good times we had in Rockaway with your sisters. And see, right now, so much happiness. And back then, it was like, oh, the ants. And now, like, oh, the ants, yes, happiness. Suk. As Ajahn Gamha always says, so much happiness whenever we let go of our defilements. But that was also, for example, one of the biggest teachings, experiential teachings of following what the Buddha says and seeing for myself how that brings to happiness. I used to drink a lot too, social drinker. To the point that I remember that back in the pre-Buddhist days, as I call them, BB, before Buddha, in my life, it was inconceivable for me to even have friends who did not drink. I thought that was extremely boring. Someone who was not interested in drinking was just completely bizarre for me. So that was another idea. I was like, oh, why are we supposed to stop drinking? It sounds awful. It's the only time I have real fun. Really, seriously? Then I stopped. I was like, oh, actually so much better, so much more fun. So great, never bored. So much more mindfulness, wonderful. Great, bonus. So another proof that the Buddha is always right. I tried to prove the Buddha wrong, but unsuccessfully. This builds this natural confidence in the path that then matures into faith. It's really remarkable. I was talking to our friend Ben the other day in the car where we were going actually to see some Buddha statues. And I was telling her, our friend is from Thailand, so she's always been very faithful. And I was telling her how at the very beginning, because I was raised very scientific materialist, neither my parents were religious or particularly like spiritual at all. So when I encountered Buddhism, a statue of the Buddha didn't really communicate anything to me. Whether it was there or not, it was more a matter of decoration. It was more kind of like, oh, that's a pretty statue. The other one is not really a pretty statue. But it could have been, you know, a painting of a hunting painting, or it could have been like whatever, any kind of, it could have been like Christian iconography or secular iconography. It didn't really matter to me. What I would see were perhaps like the sort of superficial kind of elements of the statue and whether or not they were looking good in the sort of environment, but that was about it. And as my practice has matured, actually my love for Buddhist iconography has grown and developed, and consequently has sort of reinforced and shaped my practice and gave me more and more confidence, more and more faith. Also, consolation. This is like a big term that I used to like kind of get really horrified in Christianity. I was like, consolation. Like, I don't know about that. Sounds like a little bit silly, but it's really interesting how actually there is them to sometimes think of Buddhist practice, if we're not, if we're convert Buddhists, we have a really arid approach to it as something very practical and deprived of so many things. And when really we're struck with actually what we're trying to transcend, so with extreme suffering, then you can get really lost in the world. I remember in California a few years ago that I was at this meditation class, and this man had almost lost his son in a car accident, and he was at this meditation class going, his wife was Christian, and he was saying how during all those hours, the son luckily didn't die, but he was very close to death, and they were at the hospital going through all this pain and suffering and struggle. And he said how his wife actually was really enduring everything. Although she was suffering, she was enduring it with a lot more support because of her faith in Christianity, and how he felt how for a moment he was envious of this consolation that she had in Jesus, like the fact that she knew like that there was someone there to protect her, but he did not have that. He said, in that moment, mindfulness wasn't doing anything for me. And it really struck me, because then my experience, on the other hand, whenever I'm surrounded by actually Asian Buddhists, is quite the opposite. And these actually aspects is very similar, if not the same. The sentiment, perhaps not the theology, but the sentiment is very similar to someone who really has faith in God. So it's something that I really thought about and really didn't quite understand until I started feeling it myself, until it started maturing. And once you kind of know that you're on the right path, you have so much faith in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and in the Bodhisattvas, that there is the same, like it really brings this unexpressible feeling of consolation that becomes such a strong pillar where we can rest on, that we don't feel alone in the world. We actually know that everything happens for a reason, and that we're there, and that there is better understanding of everything. And that's when equanimity arises, which doesn't mean indifference, which doesn't mean that in this moment we have to go like, oh, like sitting, struggling, or whatever it is. Rather, we can be okay with having strong emotions, understanding that that is part of our experience, but also understanding that there is some grace, there is some really powerful faith to be developed, and that protects us. And it's all wrapped, it's all together. It's something that we both develop through practicing the teachings, and it both helps us develop and practice the teachings. It's not something that we either pick this, I want to do this, or I want to do that. It's like washing your hands. You need both hands. Otherwise, they will always be like very difficult. Can't do really much, can we? And so, when we talk about the path, there's always like a beginning and an end, right? We think. And a lot of the sort of characteristics of an enlightened being seem so far away, so far away, that we always feel like we haven't even started yet. It's so beautiful how, like, my preceptor recently, we were talking, she was talking, I was listening. But she was talking about how a lot of times, we can, because all of these goals, it seems so unattainable. Like, for example, the lack of anger, like the elimination of anger, or the elimination of greed. And without even getting to the elimination of delusion, perhaps that doesn't seem like too big because we're deluded, so we don't know exactly what the work needs to be done. But if we're slightly honest with ourselves, we can see, got a lot of greed, got a lot of hate. I don't know about the delusion, but we definitely know the greed and the hate. And so sometimes we can start justifying and accepting, or kind of like shifting our sort of the goals of the Dhamma. And that's quite unskillful. We should always, as Venerable Panyavati, my preceptor, says, really be quite aware instead of what the goal is. We are talking, in fact, about the complete eradication and elimination of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is a lofty goal. If you go to any therapist and you tell them that this is your goal, they're probably going to tell you that you're insane, as Venerable Rubbinatha always tells us. So it is quite a hard task to do, but that's the task to be done. So what we should be doing is just see in this map, where are we at? So just have, instead of justifying or lowering the bar, just really being honest with ourselves and saying, okay, where am I at? And where do I have to go? And from there, being acceptant of where we are at, while still putting effort in going to our destination. And she's an incredible being. So my preceptor has developed so many incredible qualities. So I know she's way ahead of the path. But that shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be like, oh, I am like worse than everyone else, but rather it's actually inspired, going like, wow, if she's done that, I can do it too. And if that person has done that, I can do it too. And how do I do it? In the same way that every being who has followed this path has done it through the Noble Eightfold Path. So isn't it beautiful that we actually have all of the instructions laid out for us to follow? It's incredible consolation. Makes me so happy whenever I think, oh, finally I have the Dhamma, finally I have encountered it. When I think of my life prior to the Dhamma, so much chaos. Not from the outside. From the outside, it looked like I was having a great. But from the inside, it was horrible. Living in a random world, not really knowing exactly what is the purpose of all of this. So much dukkha. Sometimes making unwholesome actions, sometimes making wholesome actions, sometimes not even knowing whether they were wholesome or unwholesome, or why. And all of a sudden there was this clarity and beauty of knowing that there is a causality to everything. All right, so I think that's all I have to share for this evening.
Well, thank you very much, Ina, for that beautiful Dhamma talk. And at this time, if anyone has any questions or comments, please go ahead and type them into the live chat, and I'll read them out for Aya to answer. So there's one question so far. Danilo asks, one day I want to ordain, but my girlfriend refuses to let me unless she wants to ordain as well. She's scared of the people she would have to let go. Is there anything I could tell her?
Well, that's quite nice that if you're ordained together, isn't it? So she's afraid of the people that she has to let go, or say it again?
Yeah.
Her, not him.
Her.
Well, that's the beauty of the practice, isn't it? So that's what we are talking about, how there is in our mind, it's the attachment factor. There is the object, whether it's a physical object or a human object or a sentient being of other sorts object, whatever it is, the object, or attachment. And the attachment is what actually starts exaggerating the qualities of the object. There is this song that was popular in the 60s before I was born in Italy that I used to love a lot, way before I got into Buddhist practice, because it was really nailing it. I used to listen to it whenever I was like infatuated with someone, and it goes like, you come back into my mind, so I remember you come back into my mind, bella come sei, beautiful as you are, come non sei tu, as you are not. And I thought it was really remarkable, so great, because whenever we have this sort of infatuation with someone, which is pretty much anything, whenever nostalgia comes, like for example right now I'm very nostalgic of Italy, and I know that whenever I'll go back, I'll go, actually Italy sucks, that's why I left. But before going to Italy, I remember only the good qualities of Italy, only the beautiful things, right? And they get in the attachment that starts emphasizing them like they're over the top, like they're incredible, so awesome, so beautiful. Like we just had these cookies, actually Italian cookies arrive at the monastery the other day, and I knew that they were arriving. So the day before, I was like, because I was having this nostalgia, I was like, oh yes, those were the best cookies that I was having growing up. They were incredible. Oh, so beautiful and yummy, perfectly done. And then they arrive and I see them. I'm like so happy, and then I eat them. And I'm like, actually, they're all right. It's a cookie, whatever. So that's the point of that song. It's the same with all our relationships. So that's where the suffering comes. We think, that is a sort of wholesome way to go about the world, and that actually, if we get things the way that we want, that we're going to be happy. But in reality, we're actually just creating a bunch of delusion that eventually will disappoint us because it doesn't really match how things are. But when we actually are skillful about it, and we don't have to be indifferent to the cookies. Had I not romanticized the cookies, for example, and they had just arrived, I would have gone, oh, okay, these are pleasant cookies, and I would have thought like regular experience, okay experience. You also see in your path, sometimes you actually make progress, and sometimes you backslide because the habits, are sometimes it's kind of like the weeds. We take off all weeds, but sometimes we don't really uproot them. So then they come back. All right, oh, there we go. It's tricking me again. So for example, I have made a lot of progress with food. Have been one of my attachments historically. Made a lot of progress. Then my mindfulness got a little bit weak in the past couple of days in that domain, and bam, the defilement got me back. So I started again attaching to it, and that brought suffering. But whenever I don't attach it, actually, you can have like a pleasant experience without attaching to the pleasant experience, just knowing it for what it is. But it's impermanent, not self. Okay, it doesn't have a substantial, characteristic. It's actually dependent on causes and conditions. And it's totally okay.
Okay. And Gabriela says, what a wonderful talk, Aya. What helps gauge your overall competence in the practice of Dhamma?
What? Can you explain?
What helps gauge your overall competence in the practice of Dhamma? Like, how can you measure your competence? How can you measure how competent you are in practicing Dhamma?
By looking at the quality of your mind. Are you becoming happier, or are you becoming unhappier? Simple as that. Are your defilements diminishing, or are they increasing? And most importantly, are you paying attention while it's happening? Like, are you noticing? For example, the sort of thing that I just described, it was like me backsliding for a moment there in the food domain. But I caught myself. So I was like, oh, there you go with the backsliding. So recollecting. So this is actually, whenever we backslide, we think of it as something negative. And it can be something negative if we don't turn it into something positive. And we turn it into something positive by recollecting the Dhamma. So that's also where right effort comes into play again. So we recollect the Buddhist teachings and we go like, oh, when I act not in accordance to Dhamma, suffering arises. When I acted in the past in accordance to Dhamma, suffering decreased. So So then that, motivates me. Now, like, for example, my attachment towards the cookies has completely dissolved because I did this reflection, I did this contemplation. Had I not, then I would have gone like, oh, but actually they're better than nothing. Actually, they are pretty good. Okay, and then they finish, and then I'm like, oh, how can I get some more money in Italy, or like whatever it is, the sort of, and that's never ending. Like back in the sort of loop of samsara. But if we reflect, then we can practice once again the Buddhist teachings, and the Buddhist teachings help us. We don't really have to be too smart. We already have like the smartest teachings, so we can just see what did the Buddha teach, and then we see the quality of the mind. With the quality of the mind, we then can gauge. Gauge. Very nice word. Gauge.
Okay. And Gabriella also asks, what is something that we can do to keep our competence and confidence grounded in reality so we don't fall into the trap of overestimating our abilities? How can we be clearly aware of our competence and our confidence so that we don't overestimate our abilities?
Like, for example, if we think that we are like stream mentors when we're not stream mentors, but still having confidence in the path. Well, first of all, cultivating humbleness. So instead of so this is what we normally do, how we basically reinforce the illusion. We start creating our stories and believing them. So a lot of times, for example, if someone has an attainment and they believe they have the attainment, there are two sort of scenarios. One is that they actually have attained stream entry, or the second scenario, which is the one that so far is the only one I've seen, is that they clearly are not stream enters. And what it simply takes is actually to talk to a practitioner, a monastic preferably, but sort of a senior practitioner. Anyway, someone who's ahead of us in the path, or who has like practiced for quite some time, and explain what is our experience of reality. And pretty much every time that someone has this sort of idea, then the senior practitioner will be able to see how it's flawed because it's not in accordance to Dhamma. But if the person is too attached and has developed a lot of ego rather than humbleness, then they will be quite attached to the idea of having the attainment, which is actually another proof of the fact, for example, that one is not a stream enter. So if you have a lot of arrogance, for example, that's clearly not a sign of development in the path, but rather an attachment to whatever sort of attainment or accomplishment or idea of yourself. So instead of realizing non-self, we're realizing a sort of higher self that is completely delusional. So that's where I would say that's, I think, why the Buddha actually always recommends for us to constantly go and ask questions to senior, not seniors in like old, but like to practitioners who are ahead of us in the path. So I really love the word sensei in Japanese. That means ahead of the path. It's not necessarily like it has to be an enlightened being, especially because they're very rare in the world, but rather someone who has been practicing for some time and really asking questions, wanting to learn, and never trusting our mind. Not trusting our ideas of what the path is, not trusting our idea of what the accomplishments or attainments are, but rather trusting our experience of the Dhamma. Trusting of like, am I becoming a better person? Am I become a less arrogant person? Am I okay if someone tells me that actually I haven't attained the third jhana as I thought. Am I okay with that? Am I actually happy that someone tells me that I thought I had third jhana, but actually I didn't even attain first jhana? Can I be okay with it? And that's progress. That's much better than attaining third jhana. It's progress because that's the confidence that we have that the path is true, rather than like some sort of weird experiment. Then we can go and like, I have third jhana. I'm not going to talk with you guys with second jhana. Or like, we did a jhana retreat in January. Apparently, it was someone who was telling, like the other practitioner, oh, jhana is so easy to achieve, so easy. And the other practitioner was like, oh, it's so difficult for me, but this guy has already like achieved jhana. And actually, the person had never achieved jhana, but rather actually quite the opposite. So like. It creates these like really weird sort of scenarios where we're missing out. We're missing the point of spiritual practice to begin with.
Yeah, so while you were talking, she gave some clarification. She said, oh, I'm happy I must have hit first jhana as an example. I've hit all the jhanas.
Oh, okay. So
yeah. She says, essentially, when the quality of mind is a lot less about gaining a thing rather than relinquishing things.
Yes, exactly. I actually liked that last thing. Rather than attaining, relinquishing. Really looking at, instead of thinking, how many jhanas have I got? But rather, how many things have I let go of? That's really the nutshell of the practice. And that's actually what jhana is, by the way, as well. It's letting go rather than attaining. We talk about it in terms of attainment, but it's really letting go.
Okay, well, that's the end of the questions. So if there's nothing else, then we might go ahead and end it there since it's almost 9 o'clock. So thank you, Aya, for sharing words of Dhamma, and thank you to everyone who joined in this evening. So we appreciate your participation and discussion, and we'll see you again tomorrow at 8 a.m. So we'll end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you tomorrow.